And yeah, we're thrilled to have such a nice group of people coming tonight. So as people continue to join, and so many of our great Bethlehem people are here. We're about to have a conversation tonight with two organizations that are really dear to my heart. HIAS, formerly the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, which I've known about for a long, long time. The leading organization in the Jewish world on refugee awareness and refugee rights. And then the Day Worker Center in Mountain View, which I haven't known about as long, but I've been intimately in touch with since I moved to the Bay Area or to the Peninsula 10 years ago. And I know many people from Bethlehem has volunteered at the Day Worker Center in Mountain View, or maybe even hired folks from the Day Worker Center in Mountain View. But certainly one of the leading organizations dealing with immigrants and refugees in our community. So I really love this idea, this merging of the Jewish and the global, as well as the immediate and the local. We know that those issues that touch HIAS also touch the Day Worker Center, and how important that it is that we come together as our Jewish calendar moves towards Passover. Oh man, did I say that out loud? Whew, my heart just gave me palpitations. As our Jewish calendar moves towards Passover, there's no holiday in our tradition that is more connected to the responsibility for the immigrant and the refugee. And so exciting to be able to dive into that as a Bethlehem community tonight. Before we begin, I just wanted to note that Dorit Perry is here, and Dorit is on the HIAS National Board and has helped us at Bethlehem a lot with HIAS over the years, including tomorrow night, which is their Refugee Shabbat, Refugee Awareness Shabbat. Dorit will be joining the Bethlehem team, offering a special reading. So we hope you can join us tomorrow night as well. But I'm not going to talk, because rabbis talk too much anyways. Instead, I'm going to turn it over to an amazing member of Bethlehem, connected with the Orchard, some of our other program, Sarah Fields, who's going to help moderate some of the conversations with Joe and Maria. And then we'll be sure to open it up for questions. I'll encourage you to put them in the chat. If you don't want to type that question to everyone, you can always send me a private message, and I'll be sure to add that, especially if you want to be a little bit more anonymous, and send that over to Sarah. Sarah's great. She's the vice chair of the San Mateo Democratic Party. Even though this isn't a partisan event, she used to work for the Jewish Communities Relationship Council. She lives in San Mateo, and is just an all around, as we like to say, good people. So thanks so much for joining us, and thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, John. I'm really happy to be here facilitating this conversation. You may have noticed it was advertised with a different moderator. Dyla Ray was going to do this. Much appreciation to her. And also we should be thinking of her this evening. She had a death in the family and could no longer be here with us. So we're thinking of her and her family this evening. So just keep her in your hearts and your thoughts. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce the speakers, ask them a few questions and engage them a little bit, and then hopefully that will stir up some thoughts from the group, who I'm happy to say I see several familiar faces, both from the Bethlehem world and from some of my political organizing. So welcome to everyone. Really happy to be here. So I'm just going to read brief bios. I know sometimes it's a little awkward in the Zoom setting, but I think it's always good to know who we're hearing from. So first I'll introduce Maria Marokin. I hope the R roll worked on the, yeah, there we go. Maria is the executive director for the Day Worker Center of Mountain View, and also serves as the treasurer of the board of directors of the National Day Labor Organizing Network. Maria oversees the day-to-day operations at the center, serving as liaison with local employers and the community. Her passion is empowering workers to become members of their communities. Maria is also a graduate of the center's programs. So welcome, Maria. Joe Goldman is joining us from Southern California this evening. One of the great pleasures of Zoom is that we can be all together from all over the state and really actually all over the world. Joe is the first ever California-based community engagement director for HIAS, the world's oldest and only Jewish refugee resettlement agency, working on behalf of refugees and asylum seekers of all backgrounds. Prior to joining HIAS, he served as the senior policy associate at Mazon, a Jewish response to hunger, where he advocated to protect and expand access to the social safety net for vulnerable populations. Before returning to his native Los Angeles, where he's joining us this evening, Joe spent several years working in the heart of the Bay Area's local political environment, most recently, and with myself actually, at the Jewish Community Relations Council. He holds both a master's degree and bachelor's degree from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. So, like I said, thank you everyone for joining us, and especially thank you to Joe and to Maria for giving us some of your time this evening. So I really want to kick things off with getting to know a little bit more about each of you and the organizations where you work. So Maria, let's start with you. Please talk to us about what your organization does, its mission, your role in the organization, and a little bit about how you started and ended up in that role.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for organize this event. And bear with me, our technical challenge was really intense. Let me tell everybody, it was really intense just minutes ago. And it's a good sign. Brings a lot of energy, a lot of innovation, and kind of spontaneity that is really important. So the Day Worker Center is an organization who is almost 25 years old. And the last 20 something, I have been behind them. So I started as a domestic worker, coming to this country in 97 with my son, my only son, and a single mother. And then through my work and my passion, as Jonathan said, sorry, Rabbi, said, I have been able to help and contribute tremendously to the community. So the day labor community is really, really a resilient one. So is anything that is like a challenge, we overcome them. And also it's a great, generous community. So we are a nonprofit organization based in Mountain View, but serving pretty much all over the county, the San Mateo County also, and providing workers with services like a very basic. So I'm pretty sure later you are going to ask me what we are doing, how we're going to be thriving through this pandemic. But typically before COVID, so we was providing trainings for the workers, all type of trainings in person, of course, and also allowing them to contribute in the community and building and make a strong leadership for them. As you see my example, so I'm thriving and now I'm serving in different roles in the country, actually in the country, and it's just thanks to the organizations at the Day Worker Center that are really humble but powerful. I just enable people to contribute. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Maria. And we'll look forward to hearing more about your work. So Joe, basically the same question. Tell us a bit about what HIAS does. Give us a little bit of history and kind of how it's transitioned from sort of serving the Jewish community to now serving sort of more broadly, and how you found yourself in this role.
Sure. So I know this is a congregation that is very familiar with HIAS. Again, it's wonderful to be here. I know with having Dorit present and being such an active board member and representing the agency, and Rabbi President for having shared with me. I know that there had been a delegation that went to the border down in Texas to work with asylum seekers. This is a community that is somewhat familiar, but I will continue to kind of explain a little bit more just to bring us all up to speed. This is the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, as Rabbi Brosnet mentioned. We now just go by HIAS, and we were established in 1881. We are really old. We turn 140 this year. We're so old that Emma Lazarus was a full-time volunteer with us when her poem, The Great Colossus, was published on the Statue of Liberty. It's really an honor to get to represent and work on behalf of an agency that has helped resettle over 4.5 million people who have fled persecution throughout just HIAS's existence. We, as you mentioned, Sarah, we have a long history of having focused on the Jewish community, having gone through multiple expulsions, the pogroms, the Shoah, and of course, looking at oppression and other forms of persecution throughout the Middle East, North Africa. We helped with every wave of Aliyah to Israel. We weren't just bringing folks to the United States. And ultimately, even though there have always been a number of non-Jews that we've helped resettle over the years, we especially doubled down over the last 20 years because of our expertise, because of our partnership with a lot of government agencies in doing this work, that the recognition that we have the ability to do this work on behalf of others as Jews, as a Jewish agency. The often used tagline is, we resettled refugees because they were Jewish. Now we resettle refugees because we are Jewish. I think it's really important that we recognize that there are still Jews in need that are still trying to get out of different places. The past 4 years, we haven't been able to get Jews out of Iran, for example. There's very much a Jewish community at risk in Venezuela that we're very active in helping and supporting. But we are very proudly working on behalf of communities of all backgrounds and we are operating across 5 continents and 16 countries. We're one of the largest humanitarian agencies in Latin America that's other than the United Nations. We are providing legal support, psychosocial support, especially in mental health, given all the trauma that a lot of refugees and asylum seekers experience. We work on eradicating gender-based violence and anti-LGBTQ violence. We are working with a whole network of resettlement agencies for the few refugees who are able to actually get resettled in the United States. One of those agencies is Jewish Family Services Silicon Valley, just down the street from you, as well as Jewish Family and Community Services of the East Bay, across the Bay, which is home to the only LGBT refugee resettlement program in the entire country. So it's a really incredible agency to get to work with, and really mobilizing for me in my role, mobilizing and working with the Jewish community, with folks like you throughout California to really help connect the dots between why these issues matter to us. And one more historical point, and then I'll say how I got here and we'll carry on. The entire global resettlement system was created in direct response to what happened to Jews in the Shoah. Because Jews had nowhere to go, they had no ability to pick up and flee and seek, petition in court for resettlement or register with an agency to seek safety. And so even when we are talking about working on behalf of protecting a system and protecting those who are fleeing persecution, it has Jewish origins everywhere you look. And it is therefore, because of our own historic experience and our values, so core to who we are as a people. I personally got involved with HIAS because I fell into working in Jewish communal life. I've been mostly active in politics, as you heard. In fact, when I first moved to the Bay Area, I was originally going to law school and dropped out, but I was living with the Holtzmans, who I see are here, and it's so lovely to see them. Mark is one of my dad's best friends since childhood, so I know your community very well, and I also see Beth, and I know Ellen and Keith are also with us. And ultimately, after leaving law school, went to and deciding I didn't want to be a lawyer, worked on campaigns and landed at JCRC. Working in the Bay Area local political environment, especially in San Francisco, is not for the faint of heart. It is very brutal, as many of you know. And when the opportunity arose to move back to my native LA to be closer to family, I took the opportunity with my now husband. and ultimately landed at Highest almost 2 years ago, which is hard to believe. The majority of my job has now been under pandemic, but having the opportunity to really work with this enormous and esteemed historic agency that is doing so much work right now that is up front of mind, and mobile, and really building the relationships in the local Jewish community that cares so much about these issues, but often wasn't working on these issues through a Jewish lens, or having necessarily the opportunity to connect directly just with Highest, even if they wanted to in the past. And so it's really been an amazing experience thus far.
Thank you, Joe. So Maria, as I was thinking about this panel, when I was in college, I was part of a Jewish group that organized around the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights in New York, which there's now a Domestic Workers Bill of Rights also in California. And I learned a lot about, sort of the challenges of the workplace, which is often at home. And so the employer has a lot more power and control, and that can just be really, frankly, challenging. So there's already, I think, some challenges built into being a day laborer, even in the best of economies and the best of times. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about some of those sort of broad challenges that I think continue both before and after COVID, and then how COVID has impacted your organization's work and broadly work for day laborers. And if there's been some successes, whether you've gotten support from the city of Mountain View or from Santa Clara County or something like that.
Yeah, well, you described really our ordeal through the campaign for domestic workers' rights. So we just had one good one in Virginia, so it passed. So that's good. The struggle continues. And definitely it's something hard to explain how it's hard to get it. So how a very vital job for our economy, for our families, is really one of the less protected. People who take care of our children, our loved ones, our old ones, so they don't have almost rights as a workers, right? So we don't talk about extra rights, it's just human rights. So normal, but it's hard. It's hard to understand how we need to be fighting for little things like I should be a human right. So without any fight. So when we talk about immigrants and immigrations, so also it's very hard to understand how something not really natural, really is no brainer, right? How the butterflies, how the birds, how the fishes, how every life so move naturally, cross back and forth. So how vulnerable we are as people living and moving in any given moment. So we need to be migrant, or we are migrant for other reasons. So natural reasons, fires, earthquakes. So it's something really common and natural, but it's hard to understand. It's hard to accept. And still, people needs to be really grateful when some community open their arms for us. So it's something weird and it's painful. But we are here just to talk about how we can do better, how we accomplish our responsibilities and take this opportunity to improve our future, our world. And I believe this is the call that we are hearing now, that we are listening now. So before COVID was always challenging. People being homeless, right, be on the street, sharing apartments, sharing even hard to believe, but closet, the space in the closet, in the floor of the kitchen. So this is the life of the day laborers and domestic workers, immigrants, definitely. Well, with COVID, get a little worse, if I can say a little, right? So it's even worse. So when the Santa Clara County, and I'm just talking about that because affects directly to the Day Worker Center, just decide to have a shelter in place or be at home. So the worker has no home, has no place to be, and then the center needs to be closed. And then the center was for them like at the refugee, the place when they can be, when they can feel welcome, they can have meals, they learn, they wait for work, they share dreams and hopes and sadness. So, and suddenly they just, COVID just closed our doors and was very dramatic. So it was like the difference between day and night. And my community just get on our feet. And then we start really kind of working together, and still we were able to continue. The community response were really, really wonderfully. And we were able to provide direct services as a pay for their cellular phones. That definitely is something very important for the workers, because it was the only connection with their family and actually with the world. And this and how we can reframe, redo our work, and still continue supporting them. So it's something like I shouldn't use the word magic, but it's something really similar to that. So even without having anything, we were able to provide them and just multiply for the really almost no resources that we have, and how we were able to provide for the workers and continue be that kind of refugee for them. So that's really important.
Thank you, Maria. I think that's, having a community, even when you don't have a lot, is really important. And it sounds like your center was able to provide community for folks who don't have a lot, which, it does make a difference. It really does in these times. So I have one sort of final formal question, and then hopefully some folks who have joined us will have some questions. If you have a question, please send it to John, or you can direct message it to me. Either is fine. So my last question is just really thinking about, the Beth Am congregation is a very caring community. We try to support both local organizations and organizations that help across the country and around the world. And so, sort of thinking about the organizations that you both represent, both HIAS and the Day Workers Center, which, are really thinking about the vulnerable amongst us. How can we kind of help your organizations and advance your organizations in this time, whether it's through, our time, our money, our advocacy. We have a very active social justice group here, and an active Sadako or charitable group. So we don't lack for imagination, I hope. So really think through kind of what we can do. I'll start with Maria. Think about, how can we help and how can we support and further your work?
Well, thank you. I can say easy, all the above. So all the things that you mentioned are really needed, and actually we have been receiving it. So you have been advocating for the day workers, for the day workers centers. You have been generously giving donations to us, and we have a wonderful members of your congregation volunteering at the center. So we are very grateful for your participation in our lives and for the support to the Day Workers Center. So I believe one important piece of advocacy is just to be cognizant that this responsibility is shared with the recipient community, and when people who just come, the lately arrivals, people who just came from this country, and just to create this kind of welcoming and wise community. So in my language, there is a song that names coincidir, and it's like a coincide, and it speaks very beautifully and profoundly about our temporary states in this world. So how we are your neighbors, we as your neighbors in this world for really, really small time here, and we coincide in this moment. So just to see these beautiful faces, smiling faces, attention, paying attention to this broken English, and a person speaking and paying attention and trying to be helpful. This is really amazing. This is something really magic and powerful, right? So this is something that we are very grateful with that, because I understand and I recognize that, and I really appreciate that we are not alone in this struggle. And it's not because it's charity only, right? It's always welcome, but it's just because you recognize your responsibility with other part of the community. In this part, as you name it, Sarah, the more vulnerable in the community.
Thank you, Maria. Joe, sort of the same question, kind of how can we support and further the work of HIAS? And what are some sort of specific opportunities? I'm seeing a question from Diane Frankel about the situation at the Mexican border. So maybe speak broadly and then maybe speak more specifically to what the situation is at the border and what HIAS is doing, or what kind of help they're soliciting for specific US-Mexico border action.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so there is what Maria said is spot on. All of the above is what we need to be doing. But I would say advocacy is probably the number one, in addition to, of course, as Maria also said, charity is helpful, it's nice, it's wonderful, it's what enables us to do our work. But right now, especially in COVID, because we are all still at home, even if we're getting vaccinated, we're still staying at home right now. The number one thing you can really be doing, in addition to financial support, is advocacy, holding our elected leaders accountable. And the reason why it's especially important now is, look, the election is over. And now is the time to say, okay, you ran on this platform, both to the new administration and to even your own veteran members of Congress. I believe Ana Eshu is your member. If you're in the Los Altos Hills community, otherwise it might be Jackie Spear and a few others. And believe it or not, even though they may vote the right way, they oftentimes on these issues, they may not be leaders on the refugee and asylum issues. They're not co-signing the letters, they're not becoming authors or co-authors of important legislation. And so there's a real opportunity for the Bethlehem community and all of your partners to really step up in terms of elevating these issues in ways that I'm sure, I have no doubt you've already been doing this on this issue and others, but really continuing it. And I'm going to share a link with all of you. It's a one-stop shop for different ways to get involved, and I'll share my email address at the end. But really looking at the situation with the border right now, the good news is the Biden administration is finally, they are unraveling very slowly and delicately, because it's a very complicated situation, the repugnant, deplorable Remain in Mexico policy, which was forcing asylum seekers who were crossing from the Mexico border to actually stay in Mexico and wait their turn to have their case heard in an asylum court on our side of the border. And it created the first ever refugee camps to ever exist in the Western Hemisphere, which is horrible. I'm very pleased to share that HIAS has a huge number of staff in Mexico, on the Mexico side, working with clients all along the US-Mexico border. And as we are starting to dismantle the Remain in Mexico policy, I just know that even among the first 500 people to be let in through the border at San Isidro by San Diego, over half of those 500 people were direct HIAS clients, people who were the most vulnerable, identified, for either because they had children, for medical reasons, or were at most risk of facing immediate violence if they were to stay in Mexico any longer. And so the work that is happening, it's really incredible to have these attorneys and other staff, going around the camps with, they have the iPads in hand, helping asylum seekers fill out the forms and really taking action on those things. So it's something that I am so blown away. We just had a conversation earlier this week with Congresswoman Veronica Escobar from El Paso, where we also are very active with staff both in El Paso and or colleagues that we work with in El Paso and in Juarez, also folks who are in Brownsville, Texas, dealing with Matamoros on the other side of the border. And it's really amazing to see just how many folks are able to finally come in. It's still going to take a long time because there are tens of thousands of people. And because of COVID, we have to really be very slow and thoughtful and go through this process. And there are still policies that the Biden administration has kept in place to try to prevent significant numbers of folks from showing up at the border again to seek asylum, even though they should be able to seek asylum. One other thing I will say is that on the one hand, it is amazing that we are having these positive changes at the border, but we also are in a situation right now where, on the refugee front, the administration on the one hand has gone through all the processes we've asked it to do. It has said all the right things. That in fact, the State Department has started telling some refugees that they could get ready to come here. But President Biden is yet to sign what is called the presidential determination, which would allow for a certain number of refugees to come to this country during the fiscal year. And because of that, there have actually been dozens of refugees who had flights canceled to come here, and including a woman who is pregnant and will not be able to travel after March 15th or 17th. And so, we're kind of sitting here kind of befuddled, like, wait a minute, like, President Biden, we need you to sign this. Everything else is done. The State Department's already going ahead. And so that's why your advocacy is so important, because sometimes it's dealing with situations where there are so many challenges. We know the administration is dealing with putting out more fires than we can possibly imagine. It's up to people like you to help make sure that we don't lose sight of these things and to help the administration keep an eye on what's going on.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. I know you're never at a loss for words, and I miss you as a colleague for that reason. I have a few questions coming in that are, I think, directed to Maria. The first question is, what kind of volunteer opportunities are available to folks if they have some free time to volunteer at the Day Worker Center, or is there an opportunity for that now, or will there be in the future?
Yeah, everything that we are doing now is virtually and remotely. So just keep in mind that the workers are not really savvy in technology and how to use even texting message takes time. So we are in the process to facilitate the learning to them and just enable them just to learn through Zoom or video conference. So if you have some experience in Persian and you are bilingual, could be good use of your time. Just help us just to just bridge this gap, like the technology. The worker has challenge about connectivity, for example. So if you are in different zone, you have no internet connectivity. So everything is a little challenge for the workers. But if you are patient, if you really want to help, could be one of the ways just to be prepare the workers for kind of a more technologic era or learning process.
And it's bilingual in English and Spanish mostly?
Yeah, mostly. And it's just for now. So we are confident, or we are hopeful, like probably this year, we are going to be able to start open the doors at the center, just to have people there, less quantity, but at least a little bit more structure. Because the beauty of the center is the building is, by itself, just to have this camaraderie together in this kind of a get-together place that they are welcome. So it's something that is going to be soon, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. And I see a question, someone's kind of asking the question about being kind of an ethical employer, and if they were to try to employ someone from the Day Worker Center, would you help them with employment forms, or are folks documented or not? Kind of what does that look like exactly? If
Yeah,
someone's trying to hire someone from the day center, from the day worker
yeah,
center.
we facilitate the communication, the connection, as I said. So be bilingual is really useful. So we help with that process. And also we just kind of share what the workers decide to charge. For example, we just get information where the job is going to be done, how many hours, how much is going to be the pay, and then just connect workers with employers. So the pay is directly for the workers to them. And when they finish the work, so our services are no charge, free of charge, either for workers or for employers. So that's something. And be an ethical employer is just care about the worker, regardless legal status. We really, it's not relevant for us, the legal status of the workers. So we have people from all over the world, national included. So we have people who is born and raised here, even California, other parts of the country. So, and the legal status is not relevant. So if you are a good employer, you will be welcome to the center.
Excellent, thank you. So here's a couple of questions I think that will be for both of you, and I'll throw them to Joe first. Kind of how has COVID impacted our local immigrant populations and the refugee populations kind of across the country? Has it impacted folks who were in process towards resettlement? That's kind of the question for Joe. And then the question that's more going to be for Maria is, are your members are they able to access the vaccine? And if they are, is it because of their job, or kind of what's the sort of magical pathway? So the pathway question is sort of for Maria, and the question of kind of how refugee processing is going is for Joe vis-a-vis COVID. So we're going to start with Joe.
Yeah, the COVID situation for both refugees and asylum seekers has been a mess. It was essentially, on the one hand, it's very understandable. We needed to shut our borders, especially in the beginning, to understand, to really take stock of what was going on and try to control the spread of the disease. We understand epidemiology is without question something that needs to be taken into consideration. However, for both refugees and asylum seekers, as time has gone on, we know, okay, these are people who, they're not tourists. They are coming here and are able to quarantine for 14 days. Many of them are coming to stay with loved ones or friends who they have the ability to actually do this safely and not spread any COVID should they have it. And so, but unfortunately, it did lead to several months of no refugees coming in. And I think, particularly on the refugee front, and I know I'm using the terms, asylum seekers and refugees, they are two distinct legal categories. Although once you've been granted asylum, you reach the same legal status as a refugee. But for the COVID happened on top of 3 years of overt xenophobia and overt racism from the Trump administration, designed to curtail the number of essentially, an overwhelming majority of these people are people of color. They aren't necessarily Christian, and creating a system, really trying to rejig the system to only favor those who are white, wealthy, heterosexual, cisgender males. And it's, obviously that is not entirely, who was coming here, even under the previous administration. But when you look at the combination of how COVID has, impacted our, the ability to do this work, on top of all of those years of trying to really completely change the resettlement system, it was really profound, and we are now kind of climbing out from that. And of course, there was a huge shift in all of our work across the globe, needing to make sure there's PPE available for our staff, also PPE available for our clients if possible. How can we have, what are we able to do in terms of provide all of these different services that we do digitally when not all of our clients have an iPhone or, and it's a similar situation that Maria was talking about, whether it's here in the United States or abroad, there are people who still don't have this technology that so many of us take for granted. So it has been very difficult.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Yeah. So Maria, what's it been like to try to get access to testing and vaccines for your members, especially thinking about some of them being caretakers and caregivers? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, testing has been challenging, definitely. We, in some point, was able to get a testing site at the center, just do it every 2 weeks. And suddenly, we would cancel, so that's really sad news. Now we still, again, we have a schedule for the 30th. As tests at the center. So it's really important for us just to have a place when the workers feel comfortable with the Hispanic community, feel welcome. I insist. It's important to be welcome, to feel welcome. Maybe you know that. So, so then it's really relevant for them just to find a place when they can go and get tested. And the challenge about technology is amazing. So you have no idea how unbearable are these kind of challenges for my community. And we have, for example, I can share one example. One of the workers, so what get tested at the center, so like one Tuesday, so Friday, no, the following Monday, so he get to the center with a text message and he said, I don't know what this means. So I read it for him and then he was positive. So that means he has been Tuesday, all the days from Tuesday to Monday, just living in the same place or living in the same place with people without knowing. And this is type of our reality. So we have a person who lives in the safe parking place. That is some program for the city of Mountain View when people lives in the RVs or in their cars in a safe place. So they have only like a portable parties and they are positive. So COVID positive. So they need to use the portable parties and then there's 39 families living there. So that is the type of challenge that the community has with COVID. So now with the vaccines, so as who are 65 and above, so they are ready for take the vaccines, but younger than 65 is not the time yet. So many of the people is a little skeptical from the vaccines for many reasons. So, right. And I believe it's some important part of information that people who is hesitant to vaccine or take the vaccine needs to be honored why they are hesitant and just explain. No, just say, no, that's not true. This is the good thing, you should do it. And if you don't do it, you are evil. So that's some the thing like it feels a little bit unfair. If you are not agree, you are against everything. There's something that the challenge that we have at the center. And it's no jobs, so it's almost no jobs, and usually the workers has no transportation. Employers needs to go and pick the workers at the center, so now it's not happening. So there's no many jobs available for them still.
Well, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, COVID sucks.
It does. It really does. Like, I don't have some brilliant thing to say aside from that's really heartbreaking. But I think it's also a reminder that here in the Bay Area, where we're such a wealthy community, before COVID, these issues, some of the issues that you touched on, Maria, were really challenging, significant issues, that in Mountain View and in Palo Alto, we know there's a lot of people who live in RVs, including not just individuals, but families who live in RVs. And, the safe parking programs that we have it's better than nothing, but it's really sad that this is where we are. And you're right to say that there's still significant health challenges with the safe parking programs. There's a councilwoman in Mountain View, her name's Pat Showalter, who I remember talking to her about safe parking even before COVID. And she said, it shouldn't be a crime to be poor. Because there was for a long time, the police really harassed people who lived in RVs, and it's still a challenge for some people. And thinking about those in our community who struggle, who don't have a lot of money to begin with, COVID has just really exacerbated so much, and it's really hard. And so certainly my heart, and I'm sure I'm not alone in saying this, my heart goes out to the folks within your community who are really struggling. And I know there are people even within our community who weren't struggling before COVID who are now really struggling. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's a really difficult time that we're going through, and it's hard because this is how you have community, is through technology, but it only I can't hug Joe through this. It would be nice, but yeah. But so I am encouraged that you have each other, but I'm also really saddened to know that there are so many challenges out there.
Yeah. No sense. So some things, for example, one of the workers gets $30 citation because he's sleeping in a bench in the park.
Yeah.
So how you can do that? So how you can assimilate, understand? So why the police give $30 tickets because you are sleeping in the bench? So it's like really. So yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It is.
I think we have each other, and we are learning, because I'm pretty sure if we don't talk about that, you don't know. Because I had opportunity to be connected and related with thousands of people for many years. I'm very old. So and then many people is so nice, so kind, so pure that they don't know, they have no idea how sad and how profound are the crises that the neighbors are getting into. So thank you for listening and be open to just take some responsibility of this big mess.
Yeah. Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Joe, for the work that you're both doing in trying to lift up those within our communities who really need that lifting. For all of you who've joined us this evening, really thank you for opening your hearts and your minds to this work. Certainly, some of you probably live in Mountain View or close by. I'm seeing a question about, several questions actually, that I think we're going to have to get to another day. A question about some folks who are in the Hizmet Turkish Muslim movement, which, if you haven't followed that, it's very interesting actually, deeply upsetting. But the short version is there's a Muslim cleric in the Poconos who led sort of a particular group of Muslims in Turkey. They've experienced significant challenges, and there's actually a fairly sizable Hizmet community in the Bay Area that I'm happy to connect folks to. Some more questions about Hayes, but we've enjoyed each other's company for almost an hour. And so I'm going to give it over to John to tell you a bit more about some of our activities around Refugee Shabbat in the coming days. And also just to say, again, thank you to everyone. As I said, I was the substitute moderator. I was called into this just a couple of days ago, and really it was an honor to join all of you. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah, so much. I'm going to use my rabbinic prerogative because I got it. Just to ask Joe one other question, because it did come up, and I know it's, if you can briefly, and I know this is not a brief question, but a lot of people in our community have been concerned about some of the issues with the Rohingya and this is something that we've done before, or not, we've done engagement and advocacy at Beth Am, and I know that many people are concerned. I know Highest have been working directly. So if you could just give us a little bit of an update about that, and we would also love to continue to be engaged in the action for that too. So.
Well, thank you. And I want to say, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And so for those who have questions about particular asylum cases, I'm happy to help try to troubleshoot as well in terms of identifying the right legal recourse. The issue with the Rohingya is it's a dire one, and it is even worse now that there has been the military coup in Myanmar, Burma, and where, because before, even though you had a pseudo-democratic regime committing acts of genocide against the Rohingya, there were some channels of recourse and ability to hold it accountable in the international realm. And now, because the military junta is in power, it is significantly harder. There's really, so many in the Rohingya community feel that there's just no way that they could possibly return to the Rakhine state or anywhere else that they may have lived in Myanmar. We don't have a program out in, a lot of them live in Cox's Bazar, out in Bangladesh, but we do work very closely with our partners at Jewish World Watch and AJWS. In fact, it is not public yet in terms of when in the exact confirmed time, but we are working on a joint program actually next month to address a lot of this work as part of the Genocide Awareness Month, and getting and really helping connect the dots on the advocacy that needs to be done. It is such a unbelievably horrific dynamic of what's unfolding, and also one that we are dealing with parallels with different situations, but also with Uyghurs in China, that we definitely don't want to ignore. And a lot of the advocacy involved in what we would do for the Rohingya is very similar to how you would have to deal with the situations facing the Uyghur. So I don't have a whole bunch of direct information on that, but it's something that we are working to address. And I just, one last thing, I know I'm being verbose, but I have to say, so much of what Maria was talking about, and Sarah about dealing with the, it shouldn't be a crime to be poor. For whether it's for Highest's work or what you're doing in your own backyard, it says welcome the stranger 36 times in the Torah, more than any other commandment. The work that what we're doing at both organizations is B'Tselem Elohim, addressing that we are all made in the same image. It's Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof, it's the justice you shall pursue. This, if you really want to live out your values, it will mean, questioning what does it even mean for what happens in your backyard, for more housing, for treating the local person who is closest to you with the same human dignity and respect that you are working with Highest to want to help and support for folks who are all over the world. And so I just wanted to add that because I was very moved by what Maria was talking about.
Beautifully said, Joe.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Maria, and thank you, everybody, for joining. I'll just, if you're really interested in engaging, over the past number of years, Beth Am has engaged really sacred work with both our local and our national communities. If you're interested in being part of that conversation moving forward, I see Adam Goldman here. He was part of the delegation that went to Texas a few years ago as lawyers. I know some of other people here were very active when we helped bring in Afghani refugees from with Catholic Charities. So I know that there are many people here that have helped in that. I see Diane Franco with her church. Hopefully our good friends at All Saints in Palo Alto, we can continue to build relationships with them. So we'd love for you to be part of that. Maria, what you may not know is many of the day worker centers across the country have closed because of COVID. They've had to shut their doors. It was just too complicated. And to have a local day worker center that is open, that has remained open. The day worker center in Mountain View serves over 2,000 meals a month which is just remarkable. That was never their supposed calling. So they're really helping people not only find jobs when they can, but also, get food and shelter in any way. They're just a remarkable, remarkable organization. So it's a real blessing to have them in our community. Maria, we hope that we can continue to work with you, support you. You don't know this, but our April Tzedakah box at Congregation Beth Am will go to the Mountain View Day Worker Center this year. So that would be a really special thing, especially connected to Passover. And then Highest, there's no organization that I admire more in the Jewish landscape that lives out the core values of what it means to be Jewish, to send comfort to all who are afflicted across the globe, to remember that we were refugees and that that's part of our DNA as a refugee community, even if we have some of the comforts of living in the peninsula. So Joe, I know you have a busy weekend as it's Highest Refugee Shabbat weekend, and I think we're kicking it off for you. I think Joe's speaking at like 14 synagogues in the next 36 hours. So I'm really, really blessed that you're able to give us your time and to all of your courage, and that everything that you do and your organization does to help the most vulnerable people all across the globe. So if there's anything else, any other questions, please reach out. Join us tomorrow night for Shabbat at 6:15. Many of you are there every Friday night anyways. And thank you to Sarah for pinch hitting. It's great to have you as a part of our community as well. So I'll wish you an early Shabbat Shalom. How nice is that? And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Toda
Nice to
rabah,
meet you,
everyone.
Joe.
Muchas
Take care of
gracias.
yourself.
Toda rabah.
Gracias a ti, Jonathan. Cuídate. Okay,
Igualmente.
thank you, Sarah. Oh. Now I don't want the class. Okay.